Hi there, and welcome to another episode of the Rabid Dog's House, where we like to discuss lost or forgotten horror gems with a little bit of bite. I'm your host, Justin, and tonight we are going to discuss 2016's Nerve, directed by Henry Joost and Ariel Schulman, and starring Emma Roberts, Dave Franco, Emily Meade, and Juliette Lewis. After shy high schooler V is embarrassed by her best friend Sydney, of whom is a new internet sensation via an online reality dare-based game called Nerve, V decides it is time to shed her meek ways. She enters the game and soon finds a partner in the mysterious Ian. V rapidly becomes every bit a sensation as Sydney, leading to budding rivalries, steeper competition, and maybe even a little fun for V. Unfortunately, the dare-based game becomes more intense with each challenge, and V starts to question the sinister motives of those who created the game as well as those who watch. Nerve is for horror fans that enjoy their movies to be every bit as stylish as they are relevant to contemporary times. Also joining me tonight is my amazing co-host, Zena Dixon. And thanks again, everybody, for joining us for another episode of the Rabid Dog's House. Thank you, Zena Dixon, the real queen of horror, for joining us tonight. How you doing tonight, Zena?
I'm doing well, Justin. How are you?
I am doing really well. Very excited to discuss Nerve tonight. This is one that I have not seen before. Zena recommended it to me, and
Mhm.
I loved it. I thought it was a fantastic movie. I didn't know what to expect going in. I just knew that like I really liked the colors, which is kind of why I did the sort of pinkish light tonight.
Love it.
It's such a fun movie to look at, so much fun. When I was younger and really getting into horror, it was always for like the performances, a good chase scene, or maybe a dramatic twist. And as I get older, I realize that the visual style is very attractive to me. Like, and I guess that's kind of like a stereotypical flip. I feel like usually you think like younger people need that like visual stimulation when it comes to movies, but and I'm sure that's true, but it's almost flipped for me. Like I was almost snobbish about like if I like a horror movie, it's got to have like a good performance. Like I always love like Jamie Lee Curtis or Dee Wallace and Cujo. But once I really got into Dario Argento and just the visual style, I realized that is like becoming more important to me too. Or, like we always say, people come to horror for different reasons. It doesn't have to be one thing or another, but I think the visual and sound is just as important now to me. And I loved the look of this film. Like that brought me right into it. And I think it's a really like cool marketing idea. As always, everybody, we're going to start off with our no spoiler reviews. Then we'll jump to spoilers, so you're safe for now. But just starting off right away, now I think most people prefer to like go see a movie in the movie theater. Since the pandemic, I'm not gonna lie, I've really gotten accustomed to getting to watch movies at home. One, for me, horror movies in general, I find it hard to sometimes see with an audience because I can't really let myself get scared because you always got some joker over to the side making a comment, or somebody screaming at a moment that I wouldn't have screamed at maybe half a second later. So it
Mhm.
throws me off. So I love getting to watch horror movies at home, but the marketing for this movie, it would be really designated for people that like to watch movies on their devices or
Mhm.
on their laptops, because one, that's going to put you right into the being able to relate to V right off the bat. And I love that, like, you're watching her as she's like surfing the internet, checking her email, getting a Zoom call. Like, I think that really brings you into it right away. And even more so if you were like watching this on a laptop, like instant connection. Like, what a smart thing to do. Because, I think watching horror movies, depending on what you watch them for, whether it's blood or guts, again, for me, I like to be connected to the main character or
Mhm.
characters, and right away you can't help but like you're in the mind of V right off the bat and you can relate. And so I was connected to her anyway. I mean, I always love Emma Roberts. I liked seeing her in this role, and when we get into more in depth about performance and stuff, we'll get into it. But I really liked seeing her in this sort of vulnerable role that has like almost a tour de force. She comes around to being like a strong character, but I'm so used to seeing her as like more villainousy roles or
Mhm.
like sort of the mean girl role. So right away, I was really enjoying getting to see her. be more vulnerable. And so the visual style of the movie is great. You've got a leading character right off the bat that you can kind of sympathize with, relate to. And I didn't think that there was anybody in this movie that was like unlikable or anything like
Yeah.
that. Always happy to see Juliette Lewis. She
Yeah.
wasn't like a huge part of this movie, but kind of the flip, getting to see Emma Roberts in a more vulnerable role, it was cool to
Mhm.
see Juliette Lewis in a more mom type role. I grew up with 1990s Juliette Lewis, who was like Cape Fear, Natural Born Killers, Melissa Etheridge, Come to My Window music video where she's being all nuts. That's the Juliette Lewis I know and love, but I also love seeing her like this. So right away, there was so much that I was going to like about this movie. And of course, I think that there's like a really relevant contemporary message.
Mhm.
You and I love talking about our 90s thrillers and our throwbacks, but it is fun to see a more contemporary movie like this and to be able to instantly connect, but also see that there's like this great message that's organic into the movie. It doesn't feel like preachy at all. Now, there are a few things in this movie that are a little unlikely, but I thought that benefited the movie. I thought it benefited the story. For instance, like people getting from one end of Manhattan to the other in like seconds.
Wow.
Okay. Or, like characters who getting into a fight, but I'm glad that the fight didn't last very long. Like I could see it being like really dragged out. So again, things that might be quote unquote unlikely. And I'll give it to you, our more cynical viewers, because I know you're out there, but I think sometimes it's okay to have those things. And in a movie like this, where it's trying to be more of a thrill ride, it benefits to have sometimes you have to suspend your disbelief. Like I think that's a good thing sometimes, especially in a movie like this, which also reminded me a lot of the movie The Game, directed by David Fincher, starring Michael Douglas. I really enjoyed
Mhm.
The Game, and it's a really satisfying ride the first time through. But if you go back and watch it multiple times, you might not find any specific plot holes, but you realize that like the story really relied on characters making certain choices, and I think that like this movie's similar to that. But again, it's because it's meant to be a movie you watch, you go on that roller coaster ride. It's about the bam bam, but then you're kind of delivered with a strong message. And I just thought
Mhm.
that was really cool and a very, very fun ride. Now, this isn't one that I might go back and watch myself again and again, but I can't wait to show many people it. I think that's where I'm going to get my pleasure is I'm going to get to rewatch it with other people for their first time through. It's definitely one of those kind of movies. I am
Mhm.
so glad that you recommended this movie. I had such a good time watching it, and for a lot of different reasons. The look of the movie, fantastic. Solid performances. Everybody, and I liked too that all the characters that were villains, nobody was all good or all bad. Some people leaned more one way or the other, but everybody kind of the people wise got a chance to be good in the end and did. And it was more like the villains are like everybody who watches or the
Mhm.
people creating the game. It's the unseen, because that's the real message of this movie, which we'll get into, is how people are willing to use the internet to like shield their bad behaviors. And that's the danger of society. Society is the danger, not necessarily us as individuals. And anyway, I just thought it was a really cool movie, cool message. Loved it. Thank you, Zena. So now, Zena, you tell me, how did you first come into it? Tell me your love for this movie. What are your thoughts? What do you love about it?
Well, I'm so glad to hear that you enjoyed it, So yeah, I remember when it first came out, like I think it was 2016, and it went to theaters. I didn't see it in theaters for some reason, I don't know why, but I remember it was like during the summer. It had like a late, like July, early August type of release. And so I didn't watch it though until it was like maybe September or maybe like the end of August when it was out, on digital and stuff like that. And I completely fell in love with it. For starters, I love Emma Roberts, so I knew I was going to watch it. And then the directors, they directed Paranormal Activity, I think 3 and 4. Also, this zombie movie called Viral, which is I love that movie as well. So anyway, there's a lot of things going into it that I absolutely love. I love thrillers, and I love when movies are based on like have like a social media based influencer type of world, type of thing. So I had a feeling that I would like it, but I remember I actually did watch it on my laptop. And I first from the start, the opening, I love the opening scene, how it's like on her laptop. We meet the girl, we meet Venus, aka V, automatically because it's Emma Roberts, we're on her side. You know what I mean? She has some friends, and her close friend Sydney, you know, they kind of, you can see why they're friends, but you can see that there's a lot of tension that's there, like tension that has not really been addressed but will be addressed. And I knew that that was coming, you know. So yeah, I thought it was so great because honestly, can you imagine, like, okay, the guy that you have a crush on, clearly he knows that you have a crush on him. Your friend who's more adventurous than you, like, you know, so of course it's like some teen drama, but it is, they are in high school. So I knew that that was going to happen. And automatically, like, I loved how she got into the game, you know, decided to be a player instead of a watcher, you know. It was pretty much, she was pretty much like pushed into it, you know. So yeah, imagine the guy that you like not really caring for you, and then everybody around hearing the fact, oh, she's not my type, whatever, right? So it was just like one of those situations. And is this movie perfect? No, but I feel like it is such a good time. Like from the start, I did think that it was going to be more, you know, teeny bopper type of thing, you know, because even when they did advertise it, I remember like the advertising for it, it seemed like a thriller, but it seemed like we were going to get more high school drama, which after the first, I want to say 45 minutes, that's when things start to like get intense. Things start to like get a little bit dark. You know, you do have the dark web. And truth be told, you know, even when it comes with us, this is not the first contemporary movie that we talked about, but I feel like it was important for us to talk about this because in so many ways it's still super relatable. Not that this movie is super old, but think about if there was actual game like this, for sure I feel like people would want to record, and they would stop behaving like actual human beings and just be more about the game. And then think about it as well, with the technology that we have today, people are always recording things all the time anyway. So yeah, I just feel like this is, to me, it is such an awesome movie. And it was unfortunate that I don't feel like it was very big at the time when it was released, but I think that people will come around to this movie. I just think that maybe not a lot of people have watched it, you know, or maybe they just couldn't connect with it. But I know that its time is coming, you know?
Couldn't agree more. And from here on out, everybody, spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. Go watch it, come back, or spoil it, whatever. But yes, no. See, I think what I do, you know, when I like a movie, right away, I have to kind of go and look up like, is there a book about this? Is source material? Da, da, da. And I saw right off the bat that this movie was very well
Mhm.
critically received, and I was super happy to hear that, especially because, like I said, there are. Sorry if you hear my cat. Like, because there are these sort of like shaky moments. I will say that the book that this is based on, it seems like they addressed or it's set up in a more realistic way, it, in a way that like they decided, and I think it was the right choice to abandon sometimes logic to tell a good story, to tell a thrill. And I feel like, you know, from an academic standpoint, a lot of time filmmakers are like, you shouldn't do that. Sometimes it's the right thing to do for the story. You can't always adapt a novel word for word for word. You can't. But and I think it benefited that, like certain differences in the book, and we'll get into it when I wanted to get into it when we get to the performances. But right off the bat, you know, the one of the things that I found a little, you know, hard to believe was that she became popular so quickly,
Yeah.
like in the course of a single night. For the film, it works. In the book, it seems like it does take a little bit more time.
Mhm.
It's not like right off the gate running. So again, something that like I'm saying this to defend the filmmakers because I want to just say they knew that they could have done that. They made a choice
Right.
to not do that. And I think it was the right choice because
Mhm.
you're going to be swept right into the movie. Yeah, we could have it's night and day, night and day. You know, they could do that. They chose not to. They just like, let's go for it. So, and that's what I was alluding to in the non spoiler part of the review. The things that are possibly unlikely are okay. But no, there's a lot of things like you know, like you were saying, a lot of things that are still relevant. Yeah, technically, I guess this movie was 7 years ago. I don't think of 2016 as that long ago, but you're right, that's 7 years ago. And you know that you know at that time that was the whole like people swallowing like teenagers swallowing laundry pods or you know what I'm
Mhm.
talking about, like those laundry
Yeah, those
things.
Tide Pods.
Tide Pods, that's it. Yeah, like doing crazy stuff and filming it. You know, I watch YouTube videos that go in like ten dumbest ways people have died, and it has been like people do crazy things like
Hmm.
kissing a snake or, jumping off this building, like,
Cinnamon
crazy stuff.
challenge.
This is stuff that's so relevant. And this movie is a big old mirror that is holding up to being like, hey, everybody, look at yourselves. And I think that's fantastic.
Hmm.
Which, it showed in two moments where, like, now, I love a good hang for your life moment. Now, it wasn't my favorite moment where they're like holding on, but you got the overhead POV shot, which is all I want. And it's thrilling and scaring. And people do that. People really do that.
100%.
And, but you also see on the dark side of things, I see YouTube videos all the time about YouTube killers, YouTube hosts that have gone on killing sprees or have been the victims. We are in this world right now. You and I, this is going to go on YouTube. We're
Hmm.
talking to each other, like we're putting ourselves out there. That's the
Yeah.
world we live in now. And this movie is spot on. And I'm so happy that it was so critically, critically acclaimed at the time. Not 100%, but I think it was like an 86%
Hmm.
on Metacritic or something like that. But
I do agree with you when it comes to the character V. I thought that happened a little bit too fast, but I figured like, okay, they have to get this ball rolling. And
exactly.
I do like it. It's weird because I see that, but I also like the pacing of it. You know what I mean? I love that was to me a good enough reason for her to even start playing the game. She felt like she was kind of like a pushover. You know what I mean? So she kind of wanted to change that. Then she's partnering with Ian, aka Sam, and they have like such great chemistry. And kind of like what you said already, it's just kind of like, yeah, there were a lot of, challenges, like think like cinnamon challenge. Remember when everybody was doing that? So it's just like I totally still see this happening, even though it's like again, 7 years ago this movie was released.
The ice bucket challenge, all of those. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so true. Well, speaking of the chemistry, then, if you like, I love to get into the performances. I think it'll be easier to continue going.
Hmm.
Emma Roberts, I thought, did a really fantastic job. Like I
Yes.
said, I'm so used to her in more of these mean girl roles or
Hmm.
playing the villain. And I loved seeing her as this relatable teenager who is sort of this sidekick. I loved the chemistry between her and Dave Franco,
Hmm.
who, I guess is James Franco's brother, but I thought he might be a little bit more talented, in my opinion. I thought he was really charismatic, and you can understand 100% why this girl would take this chance because, again, yes, it's based on her. She's following this girl, Sydney, who it's her bestie. She loves her. There's
Hmm.
some resentments, which is very natural on both ends. And you have somebody, especially, and from Sydney's point of view, it's easy sometimes to have somebody in your life like V that you take for granted. It's not that you don't love them. It's not that you don't respect them, want them in your life, but you just kind of take for granted that they're always going to be in this position and you're always going to be in this position. And so I love that V, the whole point of this was that she was like, well, let me be a player instead of a watcher this time. And Emma Roberts, solid 100% believe her when she's ponytail, walking, nervous to make this kiss. And then all of a sudden, the girl who's now on the back of a motorcycle covering somebody's eyes to the girl that's like taking a stand and is telling
Hmm.
everybody, hey, this is on you. And
Right.
I thought Emma Roberts was great. Like I said, Dave Franco, I thought he was very charismatic and charming. I 100% can see why she was like, I'll go on a ride with him. And it was interesting because he really encapsulates how all the characters can be either potentially good or evil.
Hmm.
And in this movie, nobody is all bad. It ends up being, more, it's about society. Samira Wiley, I am always happy to see. I love her in Orange is the New Black.
Hmm.
One of my favorite books is The Handmaid's Tale. So when she ended up being Mora on The Handmaid's Tale, loved. So when I saw her pop up in this, I was like, oh, there she is. Oh, like it just, again, not a very big role like Juliette Lewis, but it just, I don't know, there's a spark of happiness that's just there with her performance.
Hmm.
Juliette Lewis, again, great to see her in a more, for lack of a better word, an adult role, a stereotypical mom role. I thought she
Yeah.
was great. Now, Sydney, who was Emily Meade, I believe her as a leader. I believe her as that
Hmm.
tragic, vulnerable girl who's out on the ladder. And I really felt for her when V was kind of on camera, letting her have it, like talking about her. My heart broke for that girl.
Yeah.
And I sort of kind of a shift happened within me that I think was intentional on the part of the filmmakers, that like you are sort of set up to almost not like Sydney, but the filmmakers won't let that happen.
Yeah.
And I'm glad they didn't. They made it like, okay, yeah, she's getting jealous of all these views that he's getting, but she's also, this is like all she has. So you
Hmm.
kind of really feel for her. And also the character of Tommy, played by Miles Heizer. Now it's an interesting character. Have you read the book?
I haven't. No, I knew that there was one, but no, I haven't.
Do you care if I spoil the book a little?
Spoil it.
Okay, now, and I'm spoiling it, viewers. I have not read the book either. I have read a little bit, the synopsis of it, because I probably wouldn't normally do that, but because of what I read about the character of Tommy, I'm like, oh, interesting. So Tommy in the movie is very much like V's bestie, loves her, unrequited crush. That's his whole, thing. He's also a hacker. In the book, he's actually, because he's sort of like a player. He ends
Hmm.
up playing the game, and he's the one, there's not, I don't think there's this character of Ty. Instead, it's Tommy that kind of betrays everybody in a different way. And I liked that, again, that the book instead, or the book has him kind of doing all these things. I like the movie kind of split him up. It gave some of that to Sydney, some of that to Ty, and he still had some Tommy isms. But I also really like the
Hmm.
character of Ty. I loved that, like, he's this character you are also similar to Sydney, supposed to kind of not like, and then, oh, he ends
Hmm.
up kind of being a hero. It's kind of
Yeah.
him that V goes to rather than Ian to like save the day. And I thought that was a cool little thing. But anyway, just overall, the performance I thought were really great. And what did you think, though, about everybody's performances?
Well, yeah, starting with Emma Roberts. So kind of like what you said, we're used to seeing her as a mean girl. And I remember when this movie came out, Scream Queens was already out, and so was American Horror Story Coven.
I
But I
loved her
remember
in
way
Coven. I'm sorry to interrupt. That's what I meant to say about her. I love
it's
Coven and I
incredible.
loved her in it. Go on. I'm sorry.
It's that's one of my favorite seasons of
Me
American
too.
Horror
Me
Story. Like
too.
it's just oh, but yeah,
Asylum is my favorite, but then Coven is my second favorite. But
we oh my god, we should do a ranking episode of American Horror Story.
uh, we should.
Okay, well, okay,
Sorry,
what I'll
sorry.
say
Go
was
on.
Emma.
Sorry, go on. You were
It's
saying
okay.
Coven, Emma Roberts, Scream Queens, Coven.
Yeah, Scream Queens. But I remember back in the day, she was in this movie called, well, not a movie, this series. It was like a Nickelodeon show called Unfabulous. And she was a nice girl, with her little guitar, singing. And yeah, I would watch it. And so it's just like, and I remember when she started taking these roles where she wasn't a nice girl, again, American Horror Story, Scream 4, so she just transformed. So it was nice to see her kind of go back to being like this nice girl and very much believable, like she's that talented. Dave Franco, he did an incredible job. I agree with you. I do think that he's the better actor when it comes with the brothers. Emily Meade, I remember her from My Soul to Take, one of Wes Craven movies, which I do like that movie. I know it doesn't get a lot of love, but I think it's a lot of fun. So it was cool seeing her because I haven't seen her in a while. Like I know she's been acting, but I don't recall her being in any like thriller horrors. And then of course Juliette Lewis, we love her, adore
We
her
love
so
her.
much. And with the character Tommy, Miles Heizer, so like it's funny that you say that with the book. I always thought that he should have been in it more. And like, because he's done so much, like clearly you watched the movie, so he pretty much helped her. He was like the brains of the operation with the help from Samira Wiley's character. So it's really cool to see that. And also, it's great seeing Samira. At the time, I think I was watching Orange is the New Black, but then I stopped watching it because something happened.
I stopped watching it too. My heart broke.
Mine too. And it was just like, just the way it happened. There were some people who played themselves, like there's this YouTuber, he used to be a YouTuber named Casey. He was in it. He was the guy who they were showing people who failed, and
Oh,
he's the one
interesting.
that got the cop got, he tried to grab a cop's gun for some reason, like an idiot. And yeah, so that was Casey. And then there's another one, Chloe Y. So it's just really cool just to see, you saw those little cameos. And okay, yeah, all the performances were really good.
But yeah, overall, the performances, I agree, completely great. If you're up for it, I'm then ready to talk about just the overall suspense and thrills for our horror fans out there. I feel like, again, this movie it's a building dread. I wouldn't say it's a slow burn. It's a slow burn to get to the more harrowing moments.
Mhm.
But right off the bat, you kind of know it's a dare-based game. So you know that people are going to start doing crazy things. So that's already there. But what are some of my favorite dares were like I love the whole tattoo and the lighthouse thing. Again, it's not a horror moment, it's a very sweet romantic
Yeah.
moment, but in a way that like it raises the stakes because like what if he ends up being a bad guy, what if he ends up doing this, again, horror to me is not just the something jumps out of the closet at you or the boom or the blood or the guts. Sometimes it's the dread, it's the
Yes.
anticipation, it's the suspense. And this one really does that because you do kind of like these characters, especially when they do very sweet things. And I was nervous too because I'm like, are we going to find out he's a bad guy here? What's going on? I didn't guess the lighthouse, even though it clear as day, of course that's what it would be. But like I didn't guess it, and I was like,
Yeah,
perfect.
me
But
neither.
like, and then it goes to like the sort of, because again, you also have the sweet moments like where he's singing around, and I forget the song right now, but I know I love the song. But anyway, but then they get up on the bike and it gets a little bit more intense, and
Hmm.
you're seeing these things. But like I think these dares, I think that they're terrifying, and it's terrifying because I think people would do it for money, for the
Hmm.
fame, not just the money, for the fame. But I think that like this movie works again because you love the characters. It makes the movie more suspenseful than it would be. Now, if they had gotten the casting wrong on this, I don't, it would have, who knows, it might have still worked as a concept, but the cast really sold it, in my opinion, and made this a good suspenseful movie, not just because the dares alone aren't going to do it.
Yeah.
The look of the film alone is not going to do it. But because of how they brought it all together, I thought it was a really successfully suspenseful movie. But what did you think about it? Do you like the suspense? Do you think of it as like a suspenseful movie?
For sure, I know it has like the title of it where it being like a thrilling, but like thriller. I do feel like even though it's not a horror, if you're a horror fan, I think that you would really enjoy this one because, like you said already, it's just kind of like there were plenty of scenes I felt like that when I first watched it kept me on the edge of my seat, and even when I rewatched it, earlier this week, it was just kind of like it still gives me that feeling. One of my favorite challenges where it's just like I would not be able to do it is with the character Sydney, where she has to go across the ladder to
Yeah.
another apartment and she has to walk. She can't like crawl. If it was crawling, that's a little scary, maybe, but she has to walk, balancing herself. I already have terrible balance. So there's no way. And plus, it's not, you're going to risk your life for a game. And I love the fact that she decided to bail because that's the thing. Either you fail or bail type of thing. Um, so that's cool to see. I also love in the beginning with the character V, when she hops on the motorcycle with Ian, this is before the whole blindfolding thing. But the tattoo one was super cute as well. And I didn't think, the when I first watched it, the lighthouse, but that made a lot of sense and it was super sweet. And I think that she would adore it like way down the line, right? I love when she goes to the store to try on a dress. That's all they ask her to do, just try on the dress. So that she tries it on. And it seems super simple, but then it gets sillier and sillier. And it's just like a lot of fun to watch, you know?
It really is. It's a lot of fun to watch. And yeah, that ladder sequence, as much as I kind of forgot, it's the most memorable moment, I think,
Yeah.
for me too, actually, in the film. So I can't believe I didn't mention it. But yeah, the fact that like because they have to film themselves, doing it and being up that high, it's so crazy how our mind works. You could be on a ladder 3 feet above the ground and do it just fine, but
Yeah.
being, 11, 12 stories up in the air, different story. And yeah, I thought that was terrifying, but I also loved it for the dramatic moment of V showing like I could be every bit as
Oof.
strong as you, Sydney,
Right?
doing it herself. And I'm glad, that she was a little nervous too up there, but she's like, just keep going. And
Yeah.
that's sort of her motto. That's the character development she needed. But I also
Hmm.
like to say, just because you kind of said this, yeah, it's not exactly horror, but I think that's what this show is about. Our Rabid Dog's House. It's about, our tagline, lost or forgotten horror gems with a little bit of bite. Like it's these movies that maybe not always fall right under the horror, but there's something in them that's going to appeal to horror fans. You can't just sit around. I mean, maybe some people do. I can't. I love horror. I'm up there. I love, love, love horror, but I can't sit around watching The Evil Dead every day,
Right.
Halloween every day. I mean, I could, but I want to like sometimes
Hmm.
have something a little different, but not too far away. And I feel like
Right.
this is one of those movies with, you're going to get suspense, all the same stuff you love in a horror movie. There just might not be, somebody's head cut off and flying across the room.
Right.
It's but there's always the potential in a movie like this. What's great is like there's a potential that something like that could happen, if something goes wrong. It just depends what they decide to do. And that's again what I think our show, The Rabid Dog's House, is about. It's about, yes, we're going to talk about complete horror movies, but also these kinds of movies that are on the fringe, but offer something to fans of horror that just need a break from Friday the 13th or whatever it might be, Saw, whatever. And discussing how there's always places for horror, or we talk about movies on this that are horror movies, but, or, don't necessarily fit under that term, but are going to be appealing. I also think that this is a movie similar to V's experience. She kind of took a chance and jump in. I think that this is the kind of movie for people that may want to get into horror movies, but don't quite want to jump all the way in yet. This is a movie about somebody jumping into an unfamiliar experience. And I think that, Nerve is an excellent example of that. And overall, as we get now towards the ending, I think the ending is solid. I think that there's a really positive message, but also a really relevant message, how desensitized we have all, become. I mean, everything's leading, we were talking about the suspense, it's all leading into sort of this grand finale of you have Tommy and Samira Wiley's character working with Juliette Lewis, the mom. She's about, her money's all gone. You have them trying to hack into the system to stop everything. On the flip side, you've got Ian trying to like stand up against Ty, who we don't know is actually like good. And because it's all about turning everything back onto the viewers and being like, they, after they see V shot, of which they get to vote, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Like, I try to think of like myself separated from these kind of situations, and the honest answer of what I would push either yes or no in a situation like that, whether I believe it's real or not. And I don't mean to sound like a goody goody or cheesy. I know that I could not even as a joke hit yes to like shooting her. But I also believe that there are people that could and would. And that's what's really scary. And I love that even if it's for a second of them watching this movie, getting to see like where the message is like, congratulations, you're now an accessory to murder, or whatever the message said. I love that it's almost like too good to be true, like that, like you almost want there to be a game like this to teach people a lesson, like the viewers, like stop, just because you can do something shitty doesn't mean you should. Just because you can do something and get away with it doesn't mean you should. And I think that's just such a great message, because it is sort of with the other message of this, just how desensitized we have become. Even though I might not hit yes in a scenario like that, I'm sure there are other things that I take for granted that, I don't like. It's true. I do watch these YouTube videos or top 10 worst things. Now, I can't watch certain things, but I watch more than I probably should in terms of things that are going to give me nightmares, or things that are not going to give me nightmares now because I've seen it so many times, or sort of thing. So anyway, it's just a really relevant message this movie gives. And I think it's a great starting place. And I feel like we've another sort of theme of our show is we talk about a lot of movies that I think are good transition movies into horror. And I think this is a really good one. But Zena, what are your thoughts on the ending, the message, and your overall thoughts on it?
I agree with you in some ways where it did feel like too good to be true, but I love the message of it's just exactly what you just said. Just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should. And the fact that all of these people were hiding behind a screen name or wearing masks. And even when they showed the people who did vote, it was all types of people, all ages and different lifestyles. And it's just like maybe they're bored with their lives. So maybe they just want some quote unquote entertainment. Because you have those players where it's just like, okay, maybe they wanted like an adrenaline rush, or maybe they just needed money. So it just seems like, it was all fun and games at first, but then just the fact that people voted to shoot her, I'm right there with you, where it's just like, I know for a fact I would not play with anything like that, and I would vote no. You know what I mean? I wouldn't even want to watch something like that, because that would be on my conscience. Be just like, what kind of, I just couldn't do it, So, but yeah, I absolutely love the fact that throughout this whole movie, throughout the whole time, the palette, it is very colorful. There's it's vibrant, there's bright lights, you know, neon lights, just it's very hypnotic. But then we get to this point and it's dark and people are hiding their faces. And to me, honestly, it felt very much believable that people would hide their faces and hide their, you know, their true identity, because we see it nowadays, even with people who are just trolls, you know? So I really, really love this ending. I love how intense it gets. I kind of knew where it was going. You know, I didn't believe the fact that, you know, that anything was going on with her, really, because I knew that they had a plan. And the fact that where it's just like, she's our hero, you know, and that wasn't the vibe that we were getting, you know. So I love the fact that with the character Ty, which by the way I didn't mention, Machine Gun Kelly, he did an awesome job.
Yes,
you know,
he
in the
did.
role
He
as
really
Ty.
did.
He did
Yes.
a really great job, which I think he's in Viral too. So it's cool. He's working with the directors again. But anyway, I love the fact that they partnered, V and Ty partnered together. You know, because he clearly wanted it to end as well. Because he keeps on, even though it's for money, but he keeps on risking his life.
Yeah.
You know, and for what? For money, you know, for props. So, but yeah, I love this so much, and I just cannot, you know, get enough of, again, of the soundtrack, of the action that comes along with it, the chemistry. You know, I love the characters, I love the dare. It's just all around like a really awesome time. Like if this is a movie you can watch by yourself and a movie that you can watch with a crowd.
Yeah, I definitely recommend the first time somebody watches it to watch it by themselves. And then I think it might be hard to go back and watch it again by yourself, but I think it's then a movie you can show people again and again, and you're going to get that thrill every time. Because yeah, the movie does really demonstrate the sort of how you can kind of become a junkie to these sort of thrills, but also kind of a junkie to watching people do these thrills. And I just think that the movie gives a really great concept. Again, I think that this is a movie that, yes, is very fun to look at, and in a way that like sort of social media or the internet it's all organically contained in this movie, that it's a fun movie to look at, has really strong performances, and is going to give you a couple of thrills. It's not going to go over the line, but enough that you're going to be engaged from the beginning of the movie, middle, right on through to the end, with this really not cheesy, but strong message. Well, thanks again, everybody, for joining us for another episode of the Rabid Dog's House. Are you a fan of the movie Nerve? Who is your favorite character? What is your favorite dare? What are some other thriller movies that you think people should watch with a good message? Thank you, Zena Dixon, the Real Queen of Horror, for joining us tonight. As always, you can find Zena over at realqueenofhorror.com, on YouTube under her Real Queen of Horror moniker, or over at Wicked Horror. And I'm Justin. You can also find me at Wicked Horror, 401 Pop Culture, or on Twitter at Wicked Horror Justin. And thank you, Zena. I'm so glad that you wanted to show me this movie because I loved it.
Yay. Thank you so much. I'm glad that you enjoyed it, and I'm glad that we finally were able to talk about it.
Me too. And I hope everybody has a good one. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.